another episode of the Public Opinion Show with your host, Pam Morton. And I am enjoying the summer. The Public Opinion Show is now being sponsored by the AKA Team. The AKA Team is a minority construction company whose president is Ariane Kirkpatrick, and she is an African-American female. And I think that's absolutely dynamic. So we want to thank them again for being our sponsor. And as you can see, I am still rocking these twists, but I'm ready to take them out. You all have followed me on my natural hair care journey. I went from a perm, then I went to natural, then I went to the big chop, and then I had never had braids before, so these are these box braid twists, but I'm actually getting a little tired of them now. But I will say that they were nice to have, and I think they're helping my hair grow, so we'll see. Because I am going to have another show about the natural hair care journey and different products to use and different things that you can do to protect your hair and keep it healthy. But at any rate, I wanted to talk about this week about home ownership. Home ownership versus renting, because I had a conversation with my son. And my husband and I were saying, hey, you know what? We think that you should probably buy a house. And he was saying, well, this economic climate now and it's better just to rent. Now we were like, well, I don't know. I always think it's better maybe to have like something you can invest in. But, I don't know. So that got me thinking. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do a show about that and have somebody come on here to talk about just that very subject. So let's get started and meet our guest. Andrea Wilson is the broker and owner of Brickhouse Realty, a full-service real estate firm. Andrea began her career as a corporate accountant and leveraged her financial acumen to navigate the complex world of real estate. Andrea specializes in working with first-time home buyers, real estate investors, and educating the community on the importance of owning real estate. All right, so let's meet our guest. Well, thank you so much, Andrea, for agreeing to be a participant on the show this week. I cannot wait to get into our conversation, but it would not be the Public Opinion Show if I did not have a public opinion question of the week. And the question of the week is home ownership. Should you buy or should you rent right now? So just, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to answer that, and then we're going to have a discussion about this whole climate of home ownership.
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me today.
Absolutely.
I love talking about this topic and real estate in general. And I definitely feel like this question is very timely from what we're seeing in the marketplace. For me, I'm always going to, first let me say this. It depends where you live in the region, which determines is it better to buy or is better to rent. So for the most part, if you are in the Midwest, it is probably going to be better to buy. If you are out West Coast, it may be better to rent, right? So because we're here in the Midwest, then I'm going to kind of focus in on that as more specific to Ohio. And if you are in Ohio, most cases, it is going to make more sense to purchase than it is to rent because the cost of rents have increased so much that in many cases, your mortgage payment is actually cheaper than what you're going to pay for rent. And you have more flexibility when you are owning the home because you are able to make whatever upgrades, you can make it your own, and you're building equity, which is a way of forced savings for yourself. So here in Ohio, Cleveland, you should be buying.
Okay, wonderful, great. I'm glad you said that. So in Ohio as a whole, you think?
For sure.
Okay, and I'm glad what you said about that, about rent a lot of times is higher than buying. And so you want to talk about, though, would you say that people should start out renting, though, and then save their money? How do you think that a first-time home buyer should approach the whole aspect of buying a home?
So I will start with an example because everything that I say, I live by and I do. My son is 19. He's in college. We're in the process right now looking for him a home to buy, even with him being 19 in college. The reason why we want him to do that is because the home prices are increasing rapidly. Excuse me, the home prices are increasing rapidly. So it's going to get to a point where it's so unaffordable. When I think about the home that I live in, we've been in our home for 17 years. The value of the home that I live in now has almost tripled from what we purchased it at. So for my son, I don't want him to wait until he gets 30 years old to purchase a home when he can purchase something now. And then when he's 30, he'll still have that property that he can decide to sell, to buy a home that's more, maybe more spacious or whatever. He can hold on to it and rent it out. Now, I definitely think depending on the age, helps determine the type of home that you're buying. You have to look at it as a business move and not just a place where you're going to put a roof over your head. So I think that's the first issue. A lot of times people are starting out as a first-time home buyer looking for their forever home, and they're not looking to purchase for the long term. It is buying an asset to help you kind of leap to that, to make that next move for you and your family.
So what would you say to people who are out here and they're thinking, okay, I've been in an apartment now, I want to find a place, but it just seems like the whole market is bad or whatever. What would you say to a person like that as far as their strategy or what they should be doing right now?
Okay. So this is an interesting time. So I'm going to give, I'm going to make it super relevant to what's happening in the market in the real estate industry. If you're not connected to the industry, you may not know that there's some changes coming to the marketing industry as it relates to how buyer real estate agents are compensated. So I think this is important to bring up because traditionally the seller has always paid a buyer's agent compensation. And then the buyer of a house, they didn't have to worry about that additional fee of paying for their realtor to help them through the transaction. Well, in August, that is changing, right? As of August 17th, all realtors across the country will have to sign a buyer representation agreement with their buyer. In that buyer's representation agreement, they are going to have to agree to pay for the compensation for their realtor, right? So this is an added expense. So where a buyer first had to worry about down payment and closing costs, now they have to come to the table with money to pay their realtor. So kind of circling back and how this ties into your question, right? Because that gave an added element to all of this, like now you have to think about. Now, everything is negotiation. So that's not to say that a seller can't contribute to those fees, but we're going to see it's going to become more common for a buyer having to pay all of their fees on their own. So if you are someone in the marketplace and you've been thinking about buying a home, you want to make sure that you're working with a seasoned real estate agent, preferably someone who is in the business full time, because that seasoned agent has either more experience because they've done a number of transactions, they have more credentials because they've taken additional courses and training to help negotiate their. So you want to have an experienced realtor that can help you navigate, have really good sales tactics and experience to help get you the best deal when negotiating the home, right? Yeah. So that's number one, is not just jumping on social media and saying, do y'all know a realtor? Like, and just going with
you should do some research.
You want to do research and know who you're working with. Are they working full time? Are they going to work truly on your behalf? Are they going to have good negotiation skills? Because the inventory is very limited. There is a housing shortage, so you need someone who's going to be very aggressive, who's going to have the time available to show you the houses when you need, because houses are going up on the market and they're going off the market within 24 hours.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted. We talked a little bit about that before we started taping, and I want you to talk about that now that you're saying that, because like I said before, my son was telling me, and he's in the process now, kind of been looking at houses, and he's feeling a little bit like I don't know, disenchanted, I guess. And he's kind of pulled back a little because he said a lot of the houses we looked at, we put bids on, people were overbidding what the asking price is. And is that why it is? Because there's a shortage?
There's a housing shortage.
And why is there a housing shortage?
Well, it kind of started when we go back to thinking about COVID. So when you think about the natural progression of real estate is there is a new construction or builder's market that kind of happens, and people kind of move through this natural progression where when they move up into a home, potentially they would move into a new construction home, which allows a housing availability there, right? So when COVID happened, the material shot up. So builders and construction costs are still very expensive today. So we never got back to a place where, as a country, we just got back on track to where we were with building new construction. The other side of what's happening is we went through a period of time after the housing market crash where we had historically low interest rate, right? I'm not sure what your interest rate is on your home, or it may be paid off, but just think about the person who purchased a home and they had a 2.5%, 3% interest rate. And you said, I might go out and I want to upgrade my home. I want to get another home. And then you go out to the marketplace and they're like, ma'am, your interest rate is now 6%, right? You're like, okay, well, no, thank you. I'm just going to stay. We'll do renovations to our home and we'll make it work, right? So you have a population of people who are saying, I'm not going anywhere because it just does not make good financial sense. So you have a population of people. So we have no new construction to the level where we need it. And we have homeowners who are not selling their home and just have decided to do home renovations. Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of
and so
sense
there's no
what you're
inventory.
saying.
And but we have one of the largest populations of people coming through the millenniums who are coming through and they're ready to buy houses, and there's not enough inventory. So they're competing against each other. So one of the things that I definitely suggest outside of having a seasoned realtor is if just kind of scaling back a little bit on what that pre-approval is. I think we kind of talked and touched on it. If it's 200, then let's look at homes for sale in 150. So it gives you a little bit more room to leverage. In the end, you may end up paying that 200, but you could offer that seller more. You can compete against the other buyers in the marketplace. And then the last thing I will say with all of this, and when I tell and work with my buyers, is you have to have patience. It is going to be a longer process on everyone's part. You know, I'm finding I'm spending a lot longer times with buyer clients that I'm working with than we've seen in the past. But it's definitely worth it, and just take your time, and the right property, when it's for you, and it will come.
That's true. And I'm glad you said that. And then I'm glad you said what you said about getting a seasoned real estate agent who may help you with the whole process. And so what would you do, though, in a situation where you find people in a bidding war? You know, as a seasoned real estate person, what would be your tactic in order to get this couple or this person this house that they really want? Let's just, as an example, let's just say they're looking at a house that was listed at $425,000, and people are bidding like $440,000, $450,000. You know, what would you say to that person or that couple? And let's just say, for instance, they were pre-approved for like $500,000. So what would you suggest that they do in a situation like that?
I think we need to scale back on the price point of homes that we're looking at, so we have that negotiation room. Once we identify a property that we want to go in and write an offer in on there, we can do things like offer higher earnest money deposit to show that they're serious. I always suggest for a person to have a home inspection, but if we can do some of that due diligence up front to kind of lower the inspection period.
I'm glad you said that, because my son also said people are willing to buy homes without inspection. And I was like, who would do that? Who would spend this type of money on without an inspection?
Yeah, if you can do any of that kind of due diligence up front to kind of shorten, because typically an inspection period is anywhere from 5 to 7 days. So we can kind of scale that back to maybe 3 days to shorten that window so that a person's home is not off the market for 7 days and then you decide you don't want it. Sometimes buyers are offering to take it as is, and the inspection report is more so just for common knowledge for themselves.
Okay.
That is definitely a tactic, but this is where the seasoned agent also comes in terms of having really strong negotiation skills. So you have to think, when you have a seasoned agent, or they've been in the business, or they've been through a lot of transactions, they know how to write a really solid contract and have relationships in the business to help, get you through and get that winning offer. It doesn't work all the time, but writing a strong contract, having an agent that has really good negotiation skills is definitely helpful.
Oh, good. I really am glad you said that, because I think that all of those things are things that people have been running into now. And, and I can't see how sometimes people's win would go out of their sales when they're like, oh, I got pre-approved and this house, and then now people are asking for more. Because when I haven't bought a house in, it's been 32 years, something like that. But back then, nobody would really have ever thought of paying more than what they're asking, right? Matter of fact, people were coming lower, you know what I mean? They were like, okay, this has dropped, the price has dropped on this. But what you said makes sense. If there's a shortage, then it's a seller's market. And the buyers, and you're right also when you said why people are staying in their homes. Because my husband and I were thinking at one point, okay, let's go maybe and look at a condo. But a lot of the condos were so much, and we weren't getting anything in it. And not only that, you're right, the interest rate, because our interest rate is like 3% or something like that. And so we don't owe that much. We only owe like maybe 2 more years on our house. And so what we ended up doing, which was more cost effective, we got a home equity line of credit.
Exactly.
And we got new floors, but we got, the luxury vinyl tiles put in.
Go back and start thinking like,
okay, we got both of our we got both of our bathrooms, redone. And so I said, we can kind of make this house more, more palpable for us, and at least something that we'll be willing to stay in at least 8 or 10 more years. But that's a good point. And now that all does make sense as to why people are just not really selling their houses now. And then I found some people who have told me they put their house on the market and it's sold, like you said, within 24 hours, and they didn't even have any place to go.
They don't have any places to go. So a lot of times what the seller will do is they'll say that they need extended period, 60, 90 days before that they will move. So that part is a little challenging when you're trying to sell and then need to buy, but we just work it out.
Yeah, because all of those things probably go into the negotiation of it. Like say for instance, there is a person who sold their house. They don't really have a place to go. What could kind of be like a leveraging type of a thing in that aspect? Like could the buyer say, well, I'm willing to pay a little bit for you to stay here for a little while, just as to show how much I really want this house until you can get into, as opposed to another buyer may not be able to be in a position to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they allow them to stay rent free. Sometimes the seller it's called like a rent back. The seller will rent the house back from the new buyer for an extended period of time. Because some people need the house to actually close, collect the funds, and then
exactly.
So everything is negotiation. Whatever you can get them to agree to.
That's smart, yeah. But I like that. You need to have a savvy real estate agent. So now, are there any other things that you want to talk about in that respect about buying versus renting? And I like what you said about it just depends on the region that you're in as well. But would you suggest that people have a certain amount of money saved up, or especially for like people maybe who have just gotten married or younger people, what would you say that they should do in order to prepare themselves to buy a house?
Well, 2 parts with this. Part of kind of going back to that original question, part of the reason why. So people look at California, New York, and those larger markets of like, that's just kind of what they do. That's what's happening out west, right? That's what they're paying all of that money. And so they don't realize, because they just are living in the moment here and maybe in Cleveland or in the Midwest or whatever. And they're just like, oh, we have time, and not realizing they don't. When we look at the market as a whole, what's happening is we have corporations who are buying up housing inventory. Cleveland area, Ohio, Michigan, we have some of the most affordable housing inventory in the country. So you're competing with corporations who are buying up our inventory, who are then turning it into rental properties. So they're dictating the market and what's helping increase the rents in the area. The other piece that you have foreign investors. How do I know this? Because I work with a lot of them. I work with clients from Israel, China, and all over the world, where they're buying property here because it's so cheap, right, and affordable, and it's a good investment for them to collect the rents. So you have that situation. So then you have buyers in the marketplace. Well, you know what? I'm talking to mom and dad. They have 3%. They're saying, wait, do not buy right now. We're waiting for the interest rates. So you have to realize the 2 and the 3% interest rate, that was a kickstart to get the economy back going, the housing market back on track. We may never see that again. In fact, we just saw some data come out that says 6% is probably going to be more like the new normal where we're going to be at. So the idea sometimes is, well, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to buy right now. I'm going to wait for interest rates to go down. But what's happening is when you wait for interest rates to go down, you have these buyers in the marketplace, investors, millionaires, billionaires who can afford to buy up all of these properties in our area to turn into rentals. And now you said, well, I'm going to wait. And that's 2 years from now. You don't save. You don't save because they drove the price of the houses up, right? Values are going up right now. In fact, Cuyahoga County in August, they're going up on tax value. So the value is going up. So you waited for an interest rate to go down, but now the value of the house has gone up. So you didn't save, right? And that's just going to continue to get worse along the way. And it's for the same reason I'm telling my son at 19 and my daughter at 24, like, you need to buy now instead of waiting. Because you can always refinance. Say that they do go back down to 3%. You can always refinance down the line. But once the price of the homes go up, they're not going to come back down unless we have another housing crash, and that could be who knows when. But even in that case, we don't think that we're going to see anything like it was in the past.
So do they still have those FHA loans and those, what was it called, Fannie Mae? You know, that's how when we got our first home, you know, we didn't have to put, I don't know, you only had to have a certain amount that you had to put down or whatever. Do they still have that?
Absolutely. There's first-time home buyer programs. There's VA loans. There's all kind of down payment assistance. From a lot of the cities will have down payment assistance. From the county level, from the state level, there's all kind of assistance where you can get down payment. Each program have different qualifiers. Like sometimes you could make too much money, and then some of the programs, it doesn't matter how much you make. Your credit score does matter. You know, if you're going with that FHA loan that allows for a lower down payment of that 3.5% or down payment assistance program, you really want to be at least a 620 credit score. If you're using down payment assistance programs, they really like for you to be about a 650 for those programs. So you want to start the conversation and say you're not ready. This is going back to that seasoned professional, because a seasoned professional is going to have resources for that, for you as a buyer. They're going to connect you to the various programmings for you. And if nothing else, and through AI technology, because a lot of times people are afraid to have their credit run. Well, a lot of lenders in today's market are using AI now, so they don't even have to run your credit. The AI can just kind of tell them up front without impacting your credit score, you know, if you're going to be able to get approved.
And now how does that work though?
They just take, so AI is just a collective of information that's just out on the internet about yourself. We don't realize how much information about us is out there. And so it just collects this data as the individual and just kind of says their credit worthiness without actually having to run their credit. So a lot of times people are afraid.
Because I think that's something that could probably be done anyway if you just ask people, well, wait a minute now, how many credit cards do you have? How much do you owe? That type of thing. It seems to me you probably can kind of get a kind of an idea about whether or not these people are credit worthy or how much they are owing out here and they may not, they may be in credit risk or something. So
yeah, they
that
use
makes sense.
That AI technology.
Hey, but we are in a completely, I'm telling you, this has been a great conversation because I'm learning so much because we're in such a different technologically savvy society, and there's so many different things and ways that you can go about doing things and still getting a home and it's not, but you do have to educate yourself.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
You need to educate yourself to a certain degree, because sometimes you'll educate yourself and you think you need all of this and then you don't do anything. So you definitely want to educate yourself, and there's so much information out there.
Right.
I mean, you can go to TikTok nowadays and get a lot of
well,
information.
where would you, because we're going to be winding up soon, but what resources or places do you think people should go to educate themselves about the real estate market?
YouTube is always a good. TikTok is really good. But then I'm also gonna go back to making sure you're working with a seasoned agent.
Yes.
When I myself or one of the agents in our office, when we sit down, we're gonna go through and do a full consultation with you. If your realtor is not sitting you down when you first meet them and they're just taking you through houses, then you probably want to consider another agent, one that's going to treat it as a professional,
holistic type thing. I
absolutely.
Like that.
And so, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of having a home inspection. I want to talk to you about the resources available for your situation. And some people aren't going to be ready to buy because they have credit challenges. I want to make sure I give them resources so they know where they can go and what they can do.
Wonderful person. I might have to send my son your way. But you know what? If you want to talk right to that camera and tell people, though, again, your name, and if they are interested in, are you welcoming people who
yeah, absolutely. I'm Andrea Wilson. I'm the broker owner here at Brickhouse Realty. If you're looking to invest in real estate, we help people buy investment properties. If you're thinking about selling or buying a home, we can assist with that. We educate the community. If you're thinking about getting a real estate license, we have agents in our office. We train you. We do everything.
Brick house, I like that. She's a brick house. Okay, but thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to, I'm going to go to the Women's Wealth Conference, and you're going to be speaking there. And thank you again so much, and I love your fingernails.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, I am so glad that I had her on here. I have been having this conversation with so many different people, but my son, like I said, we have been having a conversation, should you rent, should you buy? And I'm glad that she kind of clarified that it depends on where you are in the country and the place that you are at. And I do believe that it's so important to have home ownership because it's an investment. So if you like this show and you like watching following me, continue to follow me on Facebook and on YouTube. And once again, I would like to thank the AKA team for their sponsorship. If you cannot watch the show, listen on the go wherever you get your podcast. So I will see you next time. This was my last episode of the season. So enjoy the rest of your summer, and I will see you next time for another episode of the Public Opinion Show. Bye-bye.